are these people?
Oh, excuse me. There you go. Who are these people? All right. So I know today is Tuesday. No, I did not forget. Sorry about that, but I had to go live. I mean, we had a ton of Supreme Court decisions today, yesterday and today, to be fair, and a ton of fallout from those decisions. So thank you very much for joining me this week. I mean, there's nobody else coming on, so it's just me breaking down these decisions and giving my thoughts. So this shouldn't take me more than an hour, at most an hour and a half. By the way, make sure you check out Indie News Live. Indie News Live or Now? I think it's Indie News Now. Sorry, that's at 10 o'clock later tonight. So I'll probably be hanging out in the chat too. So make sure you check that out. So Indie's still doing a show tonight. I just decided to sneak in a little bit early and steal some of his thunder. I'm just kidding on that part. But yeah, seriously, make sure you check out his show. It's 10 o'clock Eastern. So yeah, check that out tomorrow. We're Indy. Reef and Colin are gonna do their show. Thursday, Indy's gonna do something, I'm sure. And Friday, I'm back with you with Angel and Friends and my panel, which I don't know who's gonna be there yet. I'm assuming Witchy and Alex will be, but anybody else will be there. I will definitely, let you guys know. But yeah, let's get to these do that. Let's get to these cases because that's what we're here for. And I don't know how many people are actually gonna join the show, but if you do, leave something in the chat. So let me know that you're listening or something, or discuss this. Hopefully I won't be too boring, but let's get into it because I don't really want to be here all night. All right, so the first case is so yesterday there were a bunch of decisions that came down. Uh, where are we? So this is the 29th. Okay, so there's four cases came down yesterday. We have. I'm not going to cover all of them because all of them not really interesting. But I'm going to cover Trump v. Cook, which is the case that held that. You've heard. I think I may have covered it on my show at the time, but there was a scandal with Donald Trump trying to fire a Federal Reserve governor, and allegedly she did mortgage fraud, which is why he was trying to fire her. But then she appealed and appealed and appealed. She's still there, and Donald Trump is trying to fire her before the appeals process is over. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. Even though in another case later on, I'm going to cover this case as well. They ruled that that it was okay for Trump to fire federal employees. But meanwhile, it's not okay to fire. They carved out an exception for the Federal Reserve, so Donald Trump can or the president cannot fire Federal Reserve governors at will, like with any other one in any other employee of the government. So, what that tells me is the Supreme Court carved out an exception for the wealthy bankers in the Federal Reserve and basically screwed your average federal employee that now can be fired for any reason. So yeah, so that's those two cases. Let's see here. We got um we got the 14th Amendment case, or also known as the Birthright citizenship case. We'll get to that. There's a ton to get to that. There's a ton to get to, I meant to say. I mean, Jesus, I'm struggling with English here again. Like,
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
nope, I don't. So let's see. We got that. We got National Republican Senatorial Committee versus the FCC, which even further guts any rules when it comes down to campaigns officially coordinating with their super PACs. Now they're going to be allowed to do that, so that's something to look forward to as well. Because now Republicans, because of this decision, can directly coordinate with their campaigns. But previously they couldn't do that, so I assume for these midterms it'll be the first time that campaigns can directly coordinate with their super PACs. So yeah, so that's it. We're gonna talk about a bunch. We're gonna also show reaction from the media. We're going to do, we're going to talk about what I'm planning on discussing at the end on Friday's episode of Angel and Friends. So make sure you check that out because at the end of the show, because I think we're gonna have an interesting show on Friday, especially if Witchy can make it. So even if she doesn't make it, we're still gonna have an excellent conversation. So let's see here. Let's get to our first one here. Let me go back here a second because I did take like a bunch of notes, but quite frankly, they're all over the place. Because what I did is I didn't before. Let me make this clear. I did not read every single page or every single decision. That would have been impossible. I do not have time for that. Hell, I barely have time to scratch my balls, let alone do that. But however, what I did was I read kind of the summary and I read other things, like and to generate my thoughts based on that. That may not be the best way to do it, but hell, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm just giving. I am a law nerd, legal nerd, whatever you want to call it, but I'm not a lawyer, So these are just my opinions, my personal opinions. These are not INN's opinions. These are not a lawyer's opinions. I'm not a lawyer, so just wanted to make that clear and get over that disclaimer because I think that's very important to to people to know if you're going to watch this that this is not a lawyer giving these opinions. This is just little old me. So let's see, let's start off with the campaign finance case because this is probably like the easiest. So this is National Republican Senatorial Committee versus the Federal Election Committee or Commission, excuse me. And basically what it is the Supreme Court reviewing whether the Federal Election Campaign Act can limit how much political parties spend in coordination with their candidates during elections. So basically, campaigns coordinating with their super PACs. FECA has long capped these coordinated expenditures. For example, a party. Um, so the court's ruling is this: the court struck down these limits, holding that FECA coordinated expenditure caps violate the First Amendment. So again, they're using the money equals speech argument or the First Amendment argument. This is from directly from the opinion here I'm reading. These spending limits necessarily abridge the political party's freedom of speech. So in other words, like even the candidates have freedom of speech, the super PACs have freedom of speech. Money equals speech. So yep. So there you go, guys. I mean, we got even more campaign spending and campaigns coordinating with their super PACs. Let's see. So the court overruled its 2001 decision, Colorado 2, which previously upheld the limits. It said at the time that modern First Amendment doctrine is more protective of political spending. Earmarking rules already prevent donors from secretly routing money through parties to candidates. FECA treats contribution in any earmarked way to a federal candidate as direct contributions. Disclosure laws are much stronger now due to modern technology, which is true. So yeah, so political parties can spend unlimited money in coordination with their candidates. So for the first time ever, let's say I don't know, one of the socialists, even though this is very unlikely, but one of the socialists that won their primaries recently in New York can call their super PACs and basically coordinate with them directly. This is what I want. This is how the talking points are going to go out. You can do this, that, and the third. And, we're all going to have one coordinated narrative, one coordinated message. Now they can do that directly. Before, they had to get around it by, basically having liaisons or basically going to media saying, hey, this is what I think what should be said and how it should be said and what's going on. So, and then there's the other way the candidates would do it is basically they would open YouTube channels and just post B footage of the candidates doing stuff with their families, campaigning, giving speeches. They would just upload these B-roll footages in order for the PACs to use them in their ads. So I think Ted Cruz did this. That's where I remember people really doing it from. So yeah, that now they could do that. Now they can do that directly. They can just give them the footage directly. They can run these ads directly, and it's going to be a total disaster. So yeah, guys, make sure you like if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. INN recently reached 3,000 subscribers, so we thank you for all the support and all the love you've given us over the last 2 or 3 years. So we're extremely grateful for that. Let's see. So yeah, that's that first case. So now let's get to what is this decision? Hold on. I have so many notes here. Sorry. Oh right, this is the voting by mail case. Let's see. I don't know why because I have it here by by the case name, and sometimes I didn't put like voting rights case or citizen birthright case. So I'm confusing myself a little bit here. Like what the hell? Okay. Let's get to that. So this case, the Supreme Court mail-in voting case, which holds that the Supreme Court considered whether federal election day statute requires absentee ballots to be received by election day or only cast postmarked by election day. Mississippi allows absentee ballots postmarked by election day to be received up to 5 business days after. Republican National Committee argues this violates federal law. Well, I didn't think. What's interesting about that is I don't like mail-in voting to begin with because there's no way to trace it. There's no way to do anything. You're just trusting that person that is allowed to vote and can properly vote in order to, accept the ballot. So there's no verification. There's nothing. There's no checking IDs, even though the United States you're not allowed to check IDs for the most part, which makes no sense. But you know, yeah, so there's no checking. It's just, yeah, here's a bunch of mail-in ballots. We don't know where they came from. We don't know whether they're mailed or not. Blah blah blah. So yeah, it's just now the Supreme Court ruled that federal election day statute do not require ballots to be received by election day. States may count ballots postmarked by election day even if they arrive later. Uh, so basically, the court argued that a court's opinion was election means the act of choosing a candidate, not the administrative act of receiving ballots. So, in other words, they basically said, well, an election is not on a day; it's basically the choosing of a candidate. So states are allowed to basically to count ballots whenever they feel like it. They don't really have to do it on election day. This has happened before. When America first became a country, the election wasn't on one day, like the first Tuesday of November, let's say, like the presidential elections take place usually. No, no, no. It was done over like a 6 month period, the elections. They were like, because at the time, there's no way that you can count ballots in one day, especially how slow information flowed in the late 1700s. So it was done over the summer and the fall elections, and that's how presidents were chosen. Usually the election was decided by November, December, and it took time for Congress to validate the results or ratify the results, let's say. And and that's why it's very important. Whoops, I don't know why I'm bringing up all these things, which is why it's very important to acknowledge that context. So that's why the Republican case didn't make much sense. Also, Congress has historically regulated when voting must occur, not when ballots are delivered. The Constitution itself separates voting from receipt. Electoral college ballots are cast on one day but received later. So yeah, that's that case. So we have the conservative Supreme Court allowing Mississippi to count ballots, in any state to count ballots the day, like after the election. They don't have to do it on election day. So my thoughts again, I think that's a solid ruling. I mean, it's, you should be able to allow to count. You should be able to be allowed to count election day election ballots, no matter even if it's after the election. There's some states that take 2 or 3 weeks after election day to fully count ballots, which is too long, but they're allowed to do it. So let's see here. The next case I got here is, here we go. Oops. So this is the case which overturned Humphrey's executor from 1935, which I will get to in a moment. This is Trump versus. Hold on. What's the case name here? Hold on. No, not it. No. I'll get to that in a moment. Why am I not seeing the case name? Oh, Trump versus Slaughter. Sorry. I mean, I write down and I lose shit, and then I can't find anything. Let's see. This is Trump versus Slaughter, so let me actually go through this real quick. So the summary: the Supreme Court decision in Trump v. Slaughter fundamentally reshapes the federal government by ruling that the president may remove FTC commissioners at will, overturning Humphrey's executor. This dramatically expands presidential control over regulatory agencies and weakens the independence of the administrative state, aka the deep state, which I think is a good thing personally. A lot of these lifers in Washington should not have lifetime jobs just because, Humphrey's executor, which I have kind of a definition of what happened there in a moment. Um, the court ruled that the president can fire the FTC commissioners at will, the Federal Trade Commission. They did it. They did put out one carve out, like I said before, for the Federal Reserve. So in other words, you're not allowed to fire the bankers, but you're allowed to fire everybody else basically now. So the administrative state or deep state is in trouble here. Because if Trump can fire them all at once, then that's going to be kind of an issue here. Let's see. I don't have a problem with that again because I don't like how bloated the federal government is. Uh, so the Trump removed 2 commissioners without citing cause, claiming Article 2 authority. So this is Humphrey's executor. Humphrey's executor have protected independent agencies for 90 years. The majority said the decision was based on a highly circumscribed view of the FTC, and its reasoning had not withstood the test of time. If anything more is left of Humphreys, we overturn it. Quoting the decision there. This is one of the most consequential overrulings in modern administrative history. So, another point, the court embraced a strong unitary executive theory. That if you guys don't know what the unitary executive theory means, it means basically the president can pretty much be king. He can control everything, doesn't need congressional permission for anything. He can do whatever he wants. And there isn't much that we can do about it as citizens or Congress rather, excuse me. Let's see here. Whoops. So now it's official. Trump is going to be allowed to fire, restructure, do whatever he has to do with the administrative state. The dissent. Let's talk about the dissent a little bit. They warned that the ruling would transform the federal government. Good. Sonia Sotomayor, there's some things here, argued the decision destroys independence of dozens of agencies. Okay, good. Rewrites 140 years of political practice. Again, I really don't care about that either. Gives the president power unknown to even the English crown, which is English crown had one of the most powerful positions in the world at the time. So that makes no sense. The president doesn't have more power than the King of England. Let's see. So there's some ways it can affect the economy. This decision to affect the economy, consumer protection, oversee workplace safety, manage nuclear energy, and regulate financial markets. This centralizes power in the White House. A bunch of independent agencies effectively cease to be independent. So the FTC, SEC, NLRB, CPSB, FERC, NRC, MSPB could now be politically reshaped overnight. Okay. Businesses and markets may face more volatility, whatever. Congress loses a major tool for designing expert driven agencies. For the last 140 years, Congress created independent commissions to reduce partisan influence, ensure expertise, maintain continuity across administrations. This ruling removes that option. There's the problem is, and which this there's a lot of questions not answered by the Supreme Court. So they basically future litigation. There's going to be more lawsuits about the Federal Reserve, non-Article 3 courts like tax court or court of federal claims, inferior officers, civil service protections. Expect years of constitutional challenges, which is the key here because there's going to be a lot more for this Supreme Court to deal with since they made that ruling. Let's see. Oh, right. Okay, so this is easy. So let's get to Chattery versus United States, which is the case about the police and geofencing warrants. So what the case was about. Police investigating in 2019 Virginia bank robbery used a geofence warrant, a warrant that forces Google to reveal all devices located within a digital perimeter around the crime scene during a specific time window. Google's location history logs their phone location every 2 minutes with high precision, approximately 20 meters. In even elevation, police use Google's three-step geofence process to narrow 19 devices down to 3 identities, including Okolilo Chattery, who was later charged. Chattery argued this was unconstitutional search under the Fourth Amendment. So now let's get to the Supreme Court decision. The court ruled that the police did conduct a Fourth Amendment search. A person has a reasonable expectation of privacy in their cell phone location data, which means accessing Google location history requires Fourth Amendment protection. In other words, it requires a warrant. Even short-term location tracking is constitutionally sensitive. The third-party doctrine, the idea that you lose privacy when you share data with a company, does not apply to location history. So that's interesting. The court compared this case to Carpenter v. United States, which protected cell site location information. It concluded that Google's location history is even more intrusive because it's more precise, it records more frequently, it reveals more intimate details of a person's life. Users often treat it like a personal journal. So, yeah, again, why would you use Google location as a personal journal? That makes no sense, but whatever. So let's see what else we have here. The court did not decide whether the warrant itself was valid. It sent the question back to the Fourth Circuit. So now it's going back to the Fourth Circuit, where now they get to decide whether the warrant was valid or not. It just so kind of now if the Fourth Circuit rules that the warrant was valid, it's going to go right back to the Supreme Court anyways to decide whether the warrant was valid or not. This ruling is most important decision since Carpenter. It directly affects how police can use modern technology to investigate crimes. However, if Witchy was here, the first thing she would say is the police are not going to care to continue doing this, and the Supreme Court cannot stop them, which is correct. I mean, I know what she's going to say, and I know what I would agree with it because, this is a piece of paper ultimately, these rulings. These are not very important. Oh, excuse me. Jesus, I mean, I'm kind of tired. So excuse me 1 second there. Now let's get to the Supreme Court trans decision with the trans athletes because this is because it's another case that came down today. This is West Virginia versus BPJ. So the Supreme Court ruled that schools may redistrict participation on girls and women's sports to teams with two biological females under both Title IX and the Equal Protection Clause. Quoting the decision, schools may determine eligibility of women's and girls' sports based on biological sex. This decision upholds state laws in West Virginia and Idaho that ban transgender girls, biological males who identify as female, from competing on female sports teams. So I got some videos here. Hold on. Before I get to the rest of this, we'll get to that on Tuesday. Here we go. But first, let me continue reading some of this. Title IX. The court held that the word sex in Title IX, 1972, the Javits Amendment, 1974, and the Federal Regulations of 1979 mean biological sex, not gender identity. So the left was arguing that the word sex in Title IX meant gender identity. Like, oh, I identify as a woman. So by definition, I have Title IX protection. It makes no sense because I'm not a woman. Like, I'm 39-year-old grown man. I'm not a woman. So me identifying as a woman makes no sense. So I think the Supreme Court again was right here by saying it's biological sex and not gender identity. So another point, which is the one thing the left is not telling people, um, separate male and female teams were permitted. Like for example, if and the way I understand this, at least the way I'm going to read this, Title IX regulations explicitly allow separate teams when based on competitive skill or contact sports. The court said the structure is reasonable because of neurophysical differences between male and females. Okay, another way I understand this is that some schools, for example, could allow a trans girl league, a trans girls league, like for men that think they're women. So you can have a league, or not a league, but a league. Yeah, let's say like a league full of trans girls. If there's enough of them, they can put together a league. They can play that way. So that's the way I understand that as well. So that's why I think, hey, oh, that's a good thing. Oh, why am I? Oh, excuse me. Let's see. Let's continue reading some of this before I go to the video. Some news coverage. The court rejected arguments that schools must allow transgender girls who take puberty blockers or hormones to compete in girls' teams. Again, puberty blockers and hormones are dangerous for girls, for boys that are transitioning, because again their bodies are developing still. So this is a very dangerous thing to do. But here's the thing: even if it wasn't, the issue is that boys grow up with thicker bone density. They're faster, they're stronger than girls. So yeah, that's not going to work because the boys are just going to destroy the girls every time. Like for example, you see it every time a women's World Cup. They go the female World Cup team go play a bunch of 15-year-olds, and they lose almost every year. They lose brutally. So the professional female athletes have never defeated male teenage amateurs, as far as I know. So yeah, there's obvious issues here. So obviously, more states can enforce trans sports bans. They can force, not force. They can enforce them now. They can. Other states can pass the laws now and be perfectly legal. So it's almost the majority of the country that ban trans girls from competing in women's sports. So isn't anything new here. Let's see. Now let's get to some videos before I go to the Birthright case. Oh, excuse me. So here we go. Let me actually share my screen. Hold on. 39 seconds here. This isn't.
Well, it'll certainly have an impact that certain transgender girls and women won't, in these particular states, won't be able to compete on girls and women's teams.
Good.
Justice Kavanaugh, who is himself, in addition to a Supreme Court justice, a sports coach of his own, coaches daughters in girls basketball, for example, is trying to be, I think, respectful there and certainly pointing out that no one deserves to be ostracized. But there will be some exclusion that will occur as a result of this, and that is, to some extent, an unavoidable consequence of the ruling, Diane.
Oh, there you go. I think I have more. Hold on. So, yeah, those are... Let's get to this one next. Because I'm going to probably spend the most time on Birthright Citizenship, so... This is another...
As Devin.
Oops. Oh, here we go.
As Devin, you had the exclusive interview with Becky Pepper Jackson, the transgender athlete at the center of the West Virginia case. She will no longer be able to participate on her track and field team.
That's right.
Good. I mean, ultimately, she has male hormones, and she's faster, she's stronger than most of the girls, and it's not fair to the girls. It's not fair to the biological girls. So why in the world should states and school districts allow these girls to compete when they're obviously male underneath their no matter what they say, I'm a girl, I'm a girl, I'm a girl, I'm a girl, they're actually male. So they have all the male advantages, and that's not fair to my opinion, at least. That's not fair to the girls that are competing.
15-year-old, the only known openly transgender student and athlete in the state of West Virginia, bravely brought this case to the Supreme Court, insisting that she had an equal right to play with the girls. But the Supreme Court today, 6-3 decision written by Justice Brett Kavanaugh, said states, school districts can draw lines based on biological sex when it comes to sports teams in schools. And so that is a setback for Becky. 29 states that have similar laws as West Virginia will continue to stand. And I will note, Kira, that 21 states don't have bans on transgender athletes. Those are unaffected by this decision, but certainly a blow to that transgender community.
So, of course, it's 6-3, what you would expect. John Roberts, Kavanaugh, Clarence Thomas, Gorsuch, Alito, and Barrett all ruled in favor. And the three liberal justices, Sotomayor, Jackson, and Kagan, ruled in favor of the trans girl. So it's what you would expect.
And student athletes on this last day of Pride Month, Kira.
So I think I have one more, and then I have one more video. Yeah, corporate media is kind of upset over this decision. And they're... let's see. All right, this is one more here. So we got breaking news from CBS where they're going to talk about the ruling here, and we have massive breaking news, or a special report. Breaking news, special report, same fucking thing. Let's see here. This before,
Man, shut the fuck up with that bullshit.
Let's see that.
Jesus H. Christ. What is that? What the fuck is that?
All right, so let's get to this.
The Supreme Court has just ruled on one of the biggest cases of the court's current term, a case involving the constitutional rights of transgender student athletes, and specifically whether states can ban transgender athletes from playing on girls' sports teams. Transgender athletes from Idaho and West Virginia challenged those state bans, but it's bigger than just those two states. 25 other states have similar laws saying that transgender athletes can indeed participate, but only on the team that matches their biological sex at birth. So let's go to Jan Crawford, our chief legal correspondent, who's been reading through this ruling. Jan, good morning. How did they rule, and on what grounds?
Well, the justices in a ruling by Justice Brett Kavanaugh are saying that states can ban transgender athletes from participating in women's sports. They're saying that these state laws you mentioned, there are 27 of them. More than half of the states have these kind of bans, that they don't violate the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause, and they do not violate Title IX, that landmark 1972 law that really leveled the playing field for girls' sports. They're saying that these states have rational reasons for wanting to have girls and boys sports teams, and that states feel free to create those teams, draw those lines however they want to draw them, including based on someone's biological sex. So this means that those state laws that now ban transgender participation will remain in place. There are 2 other states that do it by policy, so a total of 29 actual bans, while other states, it appears from this ruling, can continue to proceed like they always have. If they want to allow it, then they're free to go ahead and allow that kind of participation. That would be exactly how the court handled its last major transgender rights case, when last year it left it up to the states to decide whether or not they're going to ban puberty blockers and hormone treatments for minors. Now, this case appears to be focused very much on sports. Justice Kavanaugh talking about why states may want to have male and female sports, the differences in the biology of girls and boys, and potentially safety reasons. It's very focused on sports, which means it doesn't resolve the broader issues about transgender rights. For example, the status on a passport or military participation. The court is also not deciding exactly how it wants to treat transgender rights in terms of their constitutional status. Are they going to subject it to kind of a heightened discrimination like they would racial discrimination, for example? They're saving those issues, those very big issues, for another day. But again, a major ruling, Tony, on an incredibly contentious issue that has divided the states across this country and our politics. Whether transgender athletes can participate in girls' sports, whether states can ban them from participating in girls' sports. Today, the court is saying yes, states are free to do that under the Constitution and under federal law, Tony.
There you go. Again, my thoughts are the courts have every right to do this, or the states have every right to regulate sports however they want. If they want to ban trans kids from competing, so be it, because I don't particularly have a problem with that. Let's see, anything else? Yes, did I just close? Oh, well, whatever. Let's go to this one. Let's go to Birthright Citizenship, because this was probably the most important ruling, which is why I wanted to cover it. The Supreme Court ruled that children born in the United States, regardless of whether their parents are undocumented, only temporary in the U.S., are U.S. citizens at birth under the 14th Amendment. This decision strikes down President Trump's 2025 executive order. 2025 executive order attempting to end birthright citizenship for these children. Let's see. The majority held that the citizenship clause, all persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which is what part of what the 14th Amendment says, has always meant that, excuse me, anyone born on U.S. soil is a citizen, except for a narrow historical exception: children of foreign diplomats, enemy occupiers, and members of sovereign native tribes before 1924. The opinion quotes, a foreign mother can enter the British Isles, give birth, leave with her child, and the very next day that child will remain a British subject. And why did I keep? Hold on, get rid of that. Just realized I continue sharing my screen when I didn't mean to, guys. Let's see. No. This principle, carried into American law, was reaffirmed by United States versus Wong Kim Ark in 1899. The court rejected Trump's executive order as unconstitutional. The order attempted to deny citizenship of children born in the U.S. if their parents were, quote, unlawfully present, or, quote, lawfully present but only temporary. The court ruled that this interpretation contradicts 150 years of constitutional history, the Civil Rights Act 1866, and the 14th Amendment's original meaning. My phone's going off. Let's see what this is. Okay. Children of foreign The court emphasized the historical meaning of subject to the jurisdiction. The phrase means subject to U.S. law and authority, not having parents' legal status. Chief Justice John Roberts explained that only a few categories are exempt. Children of foreign diplomats, children born to enemy forces occupying U.S. territory, historically children of sovereign native tribes before 1924. Anyone else, including undocumented immigrants, tourists, and temporary visa holders, are fully subject to U.S.'s jurisdiction. The ruling reaffirms Wong Kim Ark decision from 1898. The court rejected arguments that citizenship should depend on parental domicile, which makes no sense. Basically, what it is, it's parents. The only way your child can be a citizen if one or both of your parents are citizens, which defeats the purpose of the 14th Amendment, which clearly says that anyone born within the United States and in their jurisdiction thereof are U.S. citizens. So approximately 300,000 babies are born each year to undocumented parents. This is the issue. I don't know why the Republicans are so against immigration. Look, the United States birth rate has gone down every single year. Our birth rates keep doing this because it's way too expensive to have babies. So if illegal immigrants are having babies and they're citizens, that increases our population, which is a good thing for the country. But instead, everyone is like freaking out and talking about how horrible this decision. Let's see. Oh, get rid of that. It also gives limits on executive power. Presidents cannot reinterpret constitutional language through executive orders. This strengthens the separation of powers and reinforced constitutional rights cannot be changed unilaterally. So let's see. So that's the summary of the case. And again, I think the Supreme Court was right here overall. I mean, we got a situation here where Trump was trying to take away citizenship from like 300,000 babies, pretty much, approximately each year. Let's see. So let's get to some of this. There's more videos here that I have. Where is it? We'll get to a lot of this in a second, but not that. Oh, here we go. So let's get to Supreme Court Justice here, Clarence Thomas. He has some thoughts on this. I share my screen first. So this is on Fox News, of course. So let's watch this.
Back to Shannon Bream for the view from Justice Thomas, who was a dissenter here. Shannon.
Yeah, in his dissent, he gets to that point, Bill, that you're making there. The 14th Amendment was enacted in the wake of the Civil War, quote, with the one pervading purpose of securing equal citizenship for the freed slaves. He writes, it was enacted, as Justice Harlan wrote, to secure to a race recently emancipated the civil rights that other citizens enjoyed. So Thomas has always been about that was the purpose of the 14th Amendment. He goes on to say that the court, meaning the majority now, has repurposed the 14th Amendment to protect its own set of preferred rights that the Reconstruction Congress never contemplated and that cannot find support in the text. Today, the court does so by recognizing a constitutional right to citizenship for the children of all foreign birth tourists and illegal aliens. Uses very specific language there. Again, Justice Thomas adhering and agreeing with the government's argument, which they made here very passionately, that the 14th Amendment was about protecting the children of freed slaves and not what we've come to understand it as. You see his language there. He mentions birth tourism. It came up in the arguments, and clearly that's a very big concern of the dissenters. We also have dissents by Justice Alito and others, so we'll read those as well.
So there you go. Yeah, we have Clarence Thomas's thoughts. So we'll get to that in a moment. But I want to get to this. if you guys haven't, I'm sure very few people are actually watching live, and I get it because I'm usually not live on Tuesdays, and I'm usually not live at this time. So what is this? Oh, okay, never mind. So hope you guys watch afterwards, and give your thoughts in the comment section below. So this is a letter or that explains the intent of the 14th Amendment. So according to this account who shared it, this document is a page from the Congressional Globe, the official record of the U.S. congressional debates at the time, specifically from the 39th Congress, first session, May 30th, 1866, page 2890. So that's the sourcing there. Let's see. So this part is circled here. Is by virtue of national law, and national law as a citizen of the United States. This will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens, or who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers accredited to the government of the United States, but it will include every other class of persons. It settles the great question of citizenship and removes all doubt of what persons are or are not citizens of the United States. This has long been a great dissertatium. Sorry, must be an old word in the jurisprudence and legislation of this country. So, in other words, the intent keyword was it's getting dark here, so it's fine for now. I may wrap up the next 10 or 15 minutes anyway, so I didn't want to spend too much longer here, especially since Indy's going live at 10 o'clock. So make sure you check that out as well. Let's see. So this is the intent of the 14th Amendment. Problem is, the 14th Amendment is not written this way. It's written in a way where it guarantees citizenship to everyone, no matter whether their parents are citizens or not, which is why I think the Supreme Court is ultimately correct in their decision. Because let's say the Supreme Court would have decided in a way that ended birthright citizenship. Do you imagine? That's like opening Pandora's box, because who's a citizen and who isn't? That's the question now. When a future administration gets into power, what are they going to be able to decide who's a citizen and who is it, and who isn't? Yes, the answer is yes, and that would be a disaster, quite frankly. So let's see. Let's go to more videos before we wrap up. Oh, man. No, not that one. I'll get to that one Friday. So this is another Fox News video about the Humphreys executor decision, which I brought up earlier. So let's check this out.
That had to do with a case by the name of a woman, Rebecca Slaughter. And the question was whether or not the president had the power to take independent federal agencies, the heads of those agencies, off of their job without cause. Professor, it sounds like there's a bit of a contradiction the way I'm reading it. Go ahead and clarify it. Lisa Cook can keep her job, but others like Rebecca Slaughter cannot.
Well, at issue in this case, obviously I've not read the opinions as it just came out, but at issue in the case was a rather old and established precedent called Humphrey's executor. And in that decision, the Supreme Court said that Congress could create a type of hybrid creature within the executive branch, could create a commission that the president cannot dictate who are members.
I needed to turn the light on, so that's why I got up.
Can remove those members. It barred that. It said that, in fact, Congress could create one that insulated the members from a sitting president. That has always been controversial because many...
Look, the issue, this is 1935, so FDR was president, and FDR was kind of a tyrant. He wanted the government to do exactly what he wanted when he wanted, and he wanted the power to fire people in the administrative state that was against that, which is why the Supreme Court, they carved out this Humphreys executor exception for federal employees.
Scholars and many judges have said, look, you don't see any of that in the Constitution. There's no hybrid animals. There's a legislative branch, an executive branch, a judicial branch. So if they ruled against Slaughter and in favor of the administration, that would be a significant increase in executive power. And in combination with the immigration cases that were just handed down, it would be a particularly good week or so for the administration. This was a bit of a surprise we just saw in that election day decision. That was 5-4. It was a real Burma shave. But it came out against the GOP. This one would be actually very welcome news, even if Humphrey's executor were to survive for the administration.
It looks like Humphrey's executor is overruled, but let's get to Shannon Bream. She's been taking a look at this, and you have in particular, Shannon, you're looking at the FTC case, which seems to have been a win for the Trump administration.
Yes.
So this is kind of the contradiction which I talked about earlier in the show, which is Trump can fire whoever he wants, but they carved out an exception for the Federal Reserve, which means the high and powerful bankers that Trump cannot fire at will. There's a process, and they have to go through it before Trump can officially fire anybody in the FTC or any president. So, yeah, they carved out an exception for bankers. The Supreme Court did, which is quite frankly not surprising. And on top, it's a major contradiction of these decisions that came down yesterday and today.
It says to discharge the duties of his trust from the majority opinion, the president must have the assistance of officers he can trust. So this is this idea of him wanting people that will agree with the agenda that he has as the executive. It says it's up to the Senate to decide whether to confirm those with whom the president would prefer to work, but neither Congress nor the courts may saddle him with those with whom he cannot work. And remember, this FTC commissioner, basically the message he sent to her was, you don't line up with the administration and my agenda and what I'm going to do. And he is, as the head of the executive branch, over a lot of these executive agencies and thought. So the question gets to whether or not this applies to different agencies. We know in the Cook decision, which was about a federal governor on the board, that was a situation in which they want the Fed to have its own independence. They think that's critical. Oh, here we have it. Thank you very much, Andrew. So we have the Cook decision. But I will tell you, in the Slaughter decision, we have a dissent from Justice Sotomayor where she says this. She says the court discards a democratic regime in favor of one that distorts the structure of government to fit the majority's theory of unitary total executive control. The president emerges with far greater power than before. That's on the FTC decision where the court has said they can dismiss. The Cook
Yep, so there you go. Yeah, so that's a major contradiction, like in my opinion. It's... Okay, so... Yeah, so that's not important. A lot of that we'll get to on Friday. So make sure you check out Friday's episode of Angel in the Afternoon, or Angel and Friends. I keep forgetting my show name, or I keep getting confused. So now I want to get to a couple more videos, and then I'm probably going to be wrapping up because I don't want to spend too much time doing this. And here we go. Not this one. Is it this one? No, hold on. Not that one. I already did that one. Yeah, it has to be that one. That's the other video. So I found this one pretty funny. Stephen Miller complaining about what Democrats are going to do if they retain power or regain power. They're making Democrats out to be some sort of like all-powerful party that will do whatever it takes to get its agenda through, which is not true. Democrats won't do any of the things that they talked about, which is the reason why I'm bringing this up, because he claims that they're going to put 12 more justices on the court. So to pack the court, in other words. That's not going to happen. We all know Democrats will never, ever, 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 ever pack the court. But Stephen Miller's freaking out about it, so I thought it was pretty funny.
And one more point on this, Laura. This is existential for this country. You've covered more than anybody. When the Democrats, should the Democrats regain power, it's game over. 12 more justices on SCOTUS, 2 new Democrat states. They're going to get rid of the Second Amendment. They're going to get rid of our borders. They're going to get rid of our police. They're going to get rid of ICE, Border Patrol, DHS.
All that's made up. Democrats are not going to do any of that. No matter how much the socialists, run their mouths about how they're going to get rid of, ICE and DHS, and they're going to fund all these free programs that they promised in New York. So, yeah, it's all bullshit.
They're going to elect communists, like actual.
Oh, that's totally made up. These people are not communists. Trust me. You want to see a real communist, go run into Snow Himbo, friend of the show, was on Friday. So since he said communist, I have to play this.
Communist detected on American soil. Lethal force engaged.
Yep, and we also have to play this since communist,
China.
Yep.
Communists, Laura, not even socialists, communists will wreck this country.
Now,
That's totally made up. No communists are being elected. All right, get rid of that. So Stephen Miller freaking out here like he's to end the show here because... So again, since he said communist again...
detected on American soil. Lethal force engaged.
So, yeah, so I do want to thank everybody for watching because I'm just going to go here because this is not a long stream. I just wanted to break down each decision and give my thoughts on it. And on Friday's episode, we're going to talk about more about the socialists that have won elections. I'll have my panel again, Witchy and Alex, I'm sure will be there. And I don't know who else will be there yet. Hopefully we get maybe other panelists on there. We'll see. Because I do want to get more panelists on in the future. It's just that, I haven't really had a chance to talk to anybody else about coming on. So we're going to talk about the socialists winning and my thoughts on why, this is a fluke. This is not really real. It's not like socialists are taking over the Democratic Party. It's not going to happen. So I'll explain that. I'm probably doing a monologue on that Friday. I don't know what else I'm going to talk about because today's Tuesday. So I usually decide on Wednesday, Thursday at the latest what I'm going to talk about and what we're going to cover. So make sure you check that out. Make sure you check out Indies News Live is on at 10. I'm sure. Did I butcher that? Hold on. I don't want to get the show's name wrong because I'm pretty sure it's Indie News Live. Here we go. Oh, Indie News Now. See, I did get it wrong, of course. Indie News Live Now is at 10 o'clock Eastern tonight. Make sure you check that out. I'll be, I'll be in the chat. So join me there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I do want to thank everybody for watching. Since most people didn't watch live, and I understandably so, I barely promoted it, and where I'm talking about breaking down Supreme Court decisions and my thoughts on them. So that's very boring, I'm sure. But if you do manage to get through this whole thing and watch it, please give me a like and subscribe. Maybe a comment down below. Greatly appreciate all the support you guys have given me and INN the network. So thank you very much for watching. I hope everybody has a great Tuesday night and a great rest of your week. Check out Indie News Now at 10 o'clock. Have a nice week. Peace out.